Well, first of all, I think we should have a moment's silence for all of the electronic components that have given the supreme sacrifice for our hobby. Okay, well, don't worry, I'll keep going. What is Outernet? It works. A lot of words. It's a company that broadcasts basically internet data akin to packet radio. It's one way from satellite to Earth. They accumulate free sources of information, knowledge, weather, books, whatever, and they broadcast it down to the whole Earth. They've got 3 geostationary satellites that they use on Inmarsat, which we'll see in a moment. The idea is that you can receive this data using relatively cheap hardware. I've got a Raspberry Pi, but they stopped development of that, unfortunately, but there's a little board called a chip, which costs a princely sum of $5 or $15 or something. And it caches the data that's received from the satellite and also provides a Wi-Fi access point. So anybody in the vicinity can connect to the Wi-Fi access point and view the data that's available in the library. Where that's really useful is in remote communities in the Pacific Islands and places like that, where cell phones are incredibly prolific, but there is no internet connection. So it's basically making a very small amount of data, albeit, but hopefully useful data available for free globally. I hope I've explained that well. So this is the footprints for the satellite transmission. We're over here, of course, on Inmarsat 4, AlphaSat for EMEA, and the Americas. Another one, I forget the proper names. So the signals, as I said, the signals are broadcast over 3 satellites. One over each third of the Earth, covering each third of the Earth. The geostationary, about 42,000 k's up above the equator. There's 4 frequencies there. C-band, I believe, 1.5 gigahertz. A few different spot frequencies there. Now the bit rate is only about 2 kilobits per second. It's very, very low, and only therefore about 20 megabytes per day. So you're not going to be watching YouTube, but it's enough for text and basic weather and imagery, and even a few games. L-band hardware, sorry, L-band is used for Inmarsat reception. What I have next is a picture of the antenna. We'll bring the antenna in shortly, but it's only about that square. Being a patch antenna, its beam width is very wide, so you just kind of point it in the general direction of the satellite and it tends to receive. There's the frequencies, 8 dBi, 4 inch, there we go. Yeah, beam width of 40 degrees, so wide as a bus. You can buy the bits and pieces to get all this going from their website, and it's quite reasonably priced too. So that's from my house, which way, so I could figure out which way to point it broadly. And we just set it up outside here as well. 143, it's at 143 degrees east, and the elevation is about 50 degrees. And quite achievable from here, at least, and even more so from the islands or Central Australia, I'm sure. Now this will mean more to some of you than what it means to me. The specification of this was done through reverse engineering. It uses some fairly standard protocols that are commonly used for satellite and data communications, but the source of it is closed, unfortunately. It probably shouldn't be because they are using some open source pieces of code within it. But anyway, it is what it is. But some clever guy, if you have a look at, look this up at a hacker conference called the Chaos Computer Camp, CCC, you'll find a fantastic video of the guy that reverse engineered this. Really smart guy. 4200 baud BPSK. For those in the know, the second line I'm sure it's meaningful to you, as is the rest. I think Phil and Jeff might understand it, not me. So the software uses is called RxOS, presumably Receiver OS, and on a little board like a Raspberry Pi called a chip. The software includes the demodulator, the decoder, firmware, of course, software called the librarian, which is what you can see a screenshot from my phone on the right, and you can see one of the subcategories here. It'll be a bunch of folders containing ebooks, or chapters of ebooks at least. And any device that is nearby can connect to the Wi-Fi. It's an open access point, there's no security on it, and download and browse the data. This isn't going to take very long. So here we have a screenshot of what's happening with the receiver. The frequency, the symbol rate, RSSI, SNR, bunch of things there. And if I go to here, we can see what's happening live right now on the antenna sitting outside. You can see our SNR is around 3. Got a symbol rate error, a few packet count failures. And this is the last file that it's downloaded. Actually, it's been sitting on that for a while for some reason. Maybe it failed. Alternately, instead of a file name here, it would just sit here saying waiting for data. And that's just waiting for the next file to start once one's finished. So for those that know more about antennas and what have you than I, is that picking out, is that picking out the signal from a very, very low signal or a moderately low signal or fairly borderline? That's using I haven't talked about the other part of it, is the the radio receiver uses an SDR dongle from RTL SDR, just a TV dongle. You can't use the ones you get from eBay because they don't provide DC power to the little LNA preamp on the antenna. But they're only $20 anyway. It's so cheap for what it can do. Yeah, where was I? Let's see if it'll start where I left off. Is it going to do it? Nope. Sorry about this. Librarian. Again, that's what the user interface looks like. That's the list of folders that you can go into, a bunch of amateur radio ones, particularly AMSAT, community content, games, news, weather, random Wikipedia articles. Don't know what the next one is or the next one, but the system can receive firmware updates over the satellite. So I presume that's what those two folders may be for. Now, the company that is writing all of the software and providing the satellite bandwidth and what have you, they also produce this little thing called a lantern, which is basically the little chip computer like a Raspberry Pi, an antenna, an LNA, and a solar panel and a battery. So the idea is, and it's all in what looks to be a ABS plastic enclosure. So the idea is that would be stuck on a fence post somewhere, pointing toward the satellite, and can just sit there continuously running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year, forever, as long as there is data being provided. And I think they're looking at selling those for about $190 or something.
So when you put that first in the book, there's nothing on it, right?
Correct. There is no library.
Start populating and libraries and
And over time, the library will fill up, and somewhere along the line, there's some algorithm to delete off maybe unpopular content or old content to make room for fresh content.
What happens, like I saw in the other screen, when there's missing packets?
It'll probably drop the file depending on if it can get any error correction going or not. If there's error correction coming in with the data stream. Yeah, you'll miss out on the firmware on one frame. Yeah, that would be a shame.
Because there's no two-way communication.
That's right. It's unidirectional. You can actually. The library you can download as a blob and install if you wanted to give it a head start.
So it's the same data that's found on the net?
Yes, it is. It's basically just scraping web pages and content.
Yeah. And just being bare bones information.
Yep. And that's about it. A bunch of links. But for those of you that are quick with your phones, just leave it there for a tick, Eve. Why don't you hook up to the access point called Outernet and see what you can find. And I will... Well, a bunch of investors, but I don't know how they're going to make any money. But it may well just be philanthropy for those investors. They might just be doing it for the love. To provide this.
Come on.
You don't get bombarded with advertisements.
There are no ads. There's not enough bandwidth to provide ads. So here's the, I'm browsing it live. It's sitting out there by the shed on the table in a plastic bag. So a bunch of various
So what do you browse
things.
once you're connected?
The folder structure for anything that looks interesting.
No, but which address do you put in?
Oh, so I'm sorry, I didn't tell you that. 10.0.0.1. Community content, books, theory of computation, various chapters.
There's a naked woman in my phone.
That's got nothing to do with what I'm doing.
That must be yours. Is there any more?
Yeah, but Connie might not like it.
Is
10.0.0.1, there is a limit of 8 connections, so those of you that have missed out have missed out. One of the neat things is the weather picture is just amazing.
I'm on API. You've got API set.
Yes. How do you make that full screen? F11? There we go. So there's a map of the current weather. And what is really cool is that it's somehow separates, I guess, the data from the imagery, and it overlays the imagery depending on where you want to look. Crikey, what's that one? So that's pretty cool. Given that it's a geostationary satellite, you probably couldn't really use this if you're maritime mobile, because you couldn't guarantee your antenna was pointing in the right direction all the time. I don't know, maybe Inmarsat, I don't know, those that have used Inmarsat before, are there Omni antennas available?
If it's 40 degrees, 40 degrees is pretty good.
But if you're on a boat going through the ocean, you don't really have any, you're not going to stop to repoint your antenna every time you turn.
People use that.
But now, how did you discover this?
I can't remember. Yeah. It was a few years ago, that's flickering kind of weirdly. A few years ago I discovered it, but they didn't have any coverage in Asia Pacific, and then I checked back a year later or something, and they did. So I started mucking about.
He's really a hacker.
Yeah. Too many connections? Maybe I've been kicked off. Oh, there we go. Lots of news. Africa, Voice of America. What else can we do? Oh, the little, it's kind of going on a bit of a go slow. But the recent tab here should show the most recently acquired data in order, so that you can, if you think, oh, I looked at this a week ago, so you can look at the last week's worth of news. Oh, come on. Everyone's hammering it now. No. You can increase the number of concurrent connections on it, but I just didn't.
Well, what do you need to spread this up?
Well, now would be a good time for Eve to run out and grab a bundle of stuff. You can unplug the white battery pack, Eve. There we go. So there's a bunch of recent data that's come in, various files. Some of them are technical files, like these wind speed ones that are used for the global map. Others will be text. A 403, that's quite funny. They went to the trouble of scraping and sending a 403.
2 megabyte error file.
Yeah. Yeah. I think Eve's disconnected it now. Connection was interrupted. Yeah, cool. Thank you. Perfect. Whoops. So I was just running that off of a phone battery thingo. So what makes it all work? I'm glad you asked. One Raspberry Pi. Sweet cherry pie. SDR dongle. Common as mud. The little antenna. And I've just double-sided taped LNA on the back, low noise amplifier, on the back. And that is what comprises the whole system. So the thought is, maybe once they have these things available, or if I have a chance to go to the Solomons again or something like that, I'd take something that I could take to a village of a guy I know and leave it there. Anyway.
So your Wi-Fi comes from the Raspberry?
The Raspberry Pi sets itself up as an access point,
Okay.
and you're connecting to that. And the little SD card image you download from the internet, plug it in, turn it on, boom, away it goes.
So how much is the whole setup? Forget the battery.
Oh, how much is the Raspberry Pi? $50? There we go. Antenna and that stuff was about another 50 or 60 or something. But the pre-packaging of the one that I showed before in the plastic enclosure with the solar panel and battery, that was nice.
How much?
And robust. I think it was about 200 US.
Oh, it's not bad.
So Jeff Keating's not here, is he? I think I saw a text from him before. Yeah, it's an interesting antenna design.
So it's completely off the grid
Completely.
for emergencies.
Yeah, well, particularly the weather. And if they're broadcasting weather warnings and things like that to remote islands in the Pacific. And also, yeah, where was I heading with that? In the Pacific Islands, at least, everybody's got a cell phone, but nobody can afford the data. So this provides a meaningful volume of data that can be browsed and learned from. Thank you.
I'm wondering whether you can expand it by pulling a hard drive full of, where you can download a lot of internet content, plug it up with that as a cache,
Oh yeah, yeah.
or a solid state drive, with
Yeah,
USB stick.
suck in all of Wikipedia in one hit.
And then that just gives you updates.
Yeah, I'm not sure the processor for it might be available, which means you could probably fill the library. I don't know. Good idea. Anyway,
Thanks, Mel.
that's it. Thank you.
Not nearly as exciting.